Hello lovely people, it is May 19th at about 7 p.m. That means there's about 5 hours left of the Bout of Books readathon. If you've been living under a reading rock and you're unfamiliar with the Bout of Books readathon, I will leave a link to that website in the description along with my video that I made last week stating my participation and my goals. I thought that it would be smart to do a quick wrap up of the books that I read during the Bout of Books readathon. My goal for this readathon was to complete 4 full-length novels, and I definitely met that goal. The first novel that I completed, I'm not counting towards the total because I only finished it during the readathon. I read about the last 40 pages in the first couple of hours of the readathon, and it was the memoir Her by Christopher Tivfanys. It's a memoir about a pair of identical twin sisters. One experiences a highly traumatic event and because of it suffers from post-traumatic stress syndrome and delves into a world of drugs and depression. Pretty early in the memoir it is portrayed to us that the first twin sister overdoses, and the memoir focuses on what happened leading up to that event and how Krista dealt with losing the person who she was closest to. I felt like this memoir was very powerful and insightful. It was definitely a good look into mental illness and definitely into the relationship that occurs between sisters that are identical and spend so much of their lives together. Most of the memoir was quite dismal because of what the story was leading to. The format of the memoir wasn't necessarily chronological. It would skip back and forth through time whenever it felt necessary to weave together the narrative of Krista and Kara's life up until the point. I feel like Krista did a very good job of taking a very dismal concept and telling the story and wrapping it up in a very hopeful and positive way. I definitely recommend this to anyone who is looking to start reading more nonfiction, especially memoirs. I gave this book 5 out of 5 stars on Goodreads, and I give it 2 really big thumbs up. The next book that I read in its entirety during the readathon was Breakfast at Tiffanys by Truman Capote. I was inspired to pick up this book because of the movie, but I was hesitant to read it because I had heard that it was quite different than the movie, and I was worried that I would constantly be comparing the two. And I did, but I think that this is definitely a classic piece of literature that stands alone. I feel like the differences work well for the media that they are in, if that makes sense. I feel like this novel is a must-read for anybody who is a fan of Breakfast at Tiffanys the film. There are definite differences, but I think that anyone who appreciates the heart of the story will appreciate the novel as well. So I gave it 4 out of 5 stars on Goodreads, and I gave it a thumbs up. Next full-length novel that I read during the readathon was Bridget Jones's Diary by Helen Fielding. It is a diary format of this lady's life. It is also a modern adaptation of the classic story Pride and Prejudice. I feel like this adaptation might be one of the best modern adaptations that I have ever experienced, including Lizzie Bennet Diaries. This took the story and made it its own instead of trying to follow it so closely. It's hilarious, and the voice of Bridget Jones is very relatable and genuine, and overall it was just a really fun read. I followed up reading this novel with watching the movie, and they were both very good. I gave Bridget Jones's Diary 4 stars out of 5 on Goodreads, and the book and the movie definitely get a full thumbs up. The next novel that I finished during the readathon was one that was not on my original goal list, but it is one that I had been eyeing from afar at the library for ages and kept hearing about it on the internet. So I finally picked it up because I heard it was a fast read and I could get through with it and not covet it any longer, and that is You Go Bernadette by Maria Semple. This novel has a very interesting format. It is told through correspondences between a number of different people, reports, blogs, letters. It basically is telling the story of Bernadette, this eccentric, used to be artist turned recluse. I say artist, I mean architect, who goes missing after tons of hijinks ensue in her life. And this is her daughter compiling all of the information that she can, trying to figure out where her mother has disappeared to. While parts of this novel weren't completely realistic, I feel like this is a perfect example of reading realistic fiction and getting the most out of the fiction aspect of it. It was ridiculous and exaggerated, but it was hilarious and interesting, and I really loved it. Little side note, Maria Semple has written for television shows. I could definitely feel kind of the episodic aspects in this novel, and it's also just very hilarious. I absolutely loved this, and I'm glad that I picked it up during this readathon, and I gave it 5 stars on Goodreads, and give it 2 really big thumbs up. The last full-length novel I finished today. It is a children's novel, and it is Book Everlasting by Natalie Babette. If you're not familiar with this story, it is a story of a young girl named Winnie who decides she wants to run away into the woods, and when she does, she meets this family named the Tucks. The Tucks have accidentally discovered a spring that is basically the fountain of youth. They never age. They can't die. This novel is basically the growing relationship she has with them in the span of a day. I think this is a really good example of what children's literature should be. The storyline was concise and clear, and I also feel like it was very powerful, especially for the reading group that it is targeted towards. It's a lovely little read, and I'm glad that I finally read this. I gave it 4 out of 5 stars on Goodreads, and I gave it a definite thumbs up. I'm considering watching the film, as it looks like the film was kind of made more into a teenagery romance, and I kind of don't like that idea, but if I'm wrong, please let me know in the comments. Those are all of the full-length books that I completed during the readathon. I am currently reading The Last Wild by Pierce Torday. I just started it. I'm only about 45 pages in, but I had a lot of fun participating in the Bout of Books readathon, so I suggest if you ever get the opportunity to participate in a readathon, you should definitely do it. That's going to be all for this video. I hope you guys enjoyed, and if you have anything to say about any of the books that I read this week, I would love to hear them in the comments. I'll see you guys next time. Bye.